Welcome to Decoding Growth, where unfiltered conversations and bold ideas are reshaping retirement. Each episode cuts through the noise to reveal the strategies and unexpected alliances driving real industry change, one conversation at a time. Here are your hosts, Lisa Kottler and Will Prest.
Welcome. We are excited that you're joining us here for another episode of Decoding Growth. We have a couple of co-founders today that we're excited to have on the show. They are co-founders of one of the retired techs that's on our map, and we couldn't be more pleased to have them here today. So today we have Anthony Bunnell and Tom Bishop from Peopled. And like me and Will, both Anthony and Tom actually have experience both as executives at really large, big brands, but also as co-founders and founders of startups. And I'm creating my own language today. That's all right. But we're excited to have them here. We'll let them share a little bit more with you as we go through this about their backgrounds. But excited, and we're just going to jump right into it. And I think what Will and I really most want to know is what got you to start Peopled? What is the problem that you're really trying to solve? Because that is the question we have for everyone, and not everyone can always answer that question correctly. But what problem are you trying to solve? Why did you start Peopled?
How about I go first, Tom, and then you go? Is that cool?
Yep.
I've been in the retirement and benefits space for 25 years. I still don't know what half the stuff means. I know most of the acronym soup. I know some of the regs. I know a couple of the rules. But for the most part, if I don't know it, what is anyone else going to do with their retirement or benefits plans? I'm supposed to be the expert. So we founded Peopled based on the fact that there needs to be a lot more access to information that's easily understandable and digestible so that people can make informed decisions. So we built that with the intent to really bring information and context to folks as they go through these really critical decisions. Because what happens if they don't understand something? If they don't understand something, they do nothing. If they don't understand anything, that they don't appreciate what their employer gives to them. So for us, we want to make sure that people understand it so they can make informed decisions that are so incredibly important to their lives. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, no, I love that. That's exactly right. We talked about this for years, even back in Honest Dollar days. For me, I guess maybe the origin story really is the book, The Psychology of Money, that I'm sure many of the people listening and watching will know. And in that book, one of the quotes is that Warren Buffett's skill is investing, but his secret is time. And you shoehorn that on top of the comment Anthony just made that when people are afraid, they do nothing. They squander the most critical resource they have, which is time. And if we can help people, especially young workers in the 20s and 30s, make better informed decisions about what to do from a benefits perspective or a retirement perspective, they can become their own Warren Buffetts. They can harness the secret of time and just let time work for them in the way that time does. So that was in part the story. Anthony's right. We talked about this for a long time. And it was one of those, someday we're going to do this, until someday became today, and we're doing it.
That's fantastic. I love that because, again, not everyone can always answer the question of the problem they're solving. Often we have these shiny new toys or new type of technology that comes along, and people go figure out what they can do with it and then go find a problem to solve with it, as opposed to coming at it through the problem set. So share with us a little bit, for those that maybe haven't heard about Peopled, don't know about what you're doing, tell us what that is and how is it solving that problem that you just described?
Great. Do you want to take that, Tom, or do you want me to handle it?
Why don't you start and I'll follow?
Okay. We'll just do the tag team on everything then.
There you go.
That's
tag
great.
me in. Okay. People wants to be the next new front door for all people's benefits. So as we all know, there's either an intranet site for a company or there's a common place where everyone goes to get information about their benefits within their organization. We intend to replace that because what we know is as follows. We know more and more people are adopting the use of artificial intelligence more than anything else in terms of the adoption rates. We know that traditional experiences have not worked. You've seen that through some of the dismal financial wellness numbers, employee engagement, employee awareness. But we also realize the flip side of the fact that it's so required, like the impact on stress and productivity. So the need is there. It's just the tactics have been not necessarily deployed in the right ways. So for us to be the new front door, we ingest all the documents associated with a benefits program. We train our platform on all things benefits, compliance, et cetera, and we provide information to that employee 24 hours a day in 20 plus languages so they can get the right level of information at the time that they want it based upon the information that they give. So we know that there's been some friction and reluctance to integrate with these types of products in the past. It's because there's really been no exchange of value. We always see that there's a 15 or 20 page questionnaire, or we need this data element in order to give you some sort of calculation. With technology these days, we are able to provide value at any point in someone's financial or medical journey. So we're the new front door. We're using smart stuff to make it personalized and make it actionable. Tom, what do you think?
No, I think that's right. I think obviously with the advent of AI, more and more of what will dominate the user experience of the next 10, 15 years is going to be chat. And it's going to be built on some kind of Gen AI kind of platform because people just want to chat. They want to talk. They don't want to navigate screens. And insofar as we can imbue a chat-based experience with knowledge about benefits, with recommendations, with good insights, with the opportunity to take action, we just think that's going to become the dominant platform, the dominant experience. And we actually had one of our partners really ask us point blank, is all the money I spent on UIs over the last 10 years, is that all dead? And it was hard to say, yeah, probably. So, and she wasn't resistant at all. I think she was trying to come to her own understanding about, okay, I should just get on with it. I should stop trying to deny what everything is telling me is going to happen. And I either can delay the inevitable or I can embrace the inevitable. And that was the struggle she was going through. But it was a very honest discussion.
It's super interesting what you're talking about, chat, because it's now changed the consumer formula, hasn't it? Even though we're talking about the workplace and we're talking about an institution, you're trying to help individuals, right? So, Anthony, would it be fair to say that it's the new front door for Will or the new front door for Lisa or the new front door for Tom? Because the chat now makes it two-way. It's not generalized personalization. It's really specific to Anthony.
It's hyper-personalized. And there's going to be so many new noisy terms in this business. Remember I talked about all the acronyms that I didn't understand before? Get ready for the next wave because they're coming, right? Hyper-personalization, on-demand, UI, all that stuff is coming. But the reality is this. Tools, the way that they were built even 10 years ago, that were built on algorithms, were great. They had a whole bunch of science behind them, they had a whole bunch of research behind them. But if you didn't give all those different data elements at the time that the need was there with that user, then you couldn't perform that calculation. So what happens with people, like Tom says this all the time, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. You earn the trust of the employee or the user by giving them value whenever they give you a piece of data. Now, if you ask them for 50 pieces of data before you can give them any value, they're going to be like, wait a minute, I don't know about that because I don't necessarily trust you. So because of all this, the amount of data can be personalized and then hyper-personalized to the amount of time someone wants to spend, instead of adding this huge amount of friction in the beginning of a relationship with very little value to that end state user. So because of Gen AI, because of agentic AI, we're able to give that value to that person, that user, that much faster.
I love that.
Yeah, no, it is. It's incredible because we've been talking about personalization for years in our industry. Now we have the ability through what you described to actually do it. And it's great to see a company like yours taking that available technology and actually doing it. You mentioned, let's talk a little bit about what is your unique value prop, because we know there are others that are trying to do something similar. So how is people different? What are you doing? Is it about your business model, your technology, something else, all of it? What
There's
makes
probably, yeah, fantastic question. There's probably a whole bunch of stuff in each one of those things. Like our business model is unique. The intent is unique. I think Tom's brought some tech that's really cool. I think fundamentally it's alignment. We always have this, especially in the financial services world. There's, what does that company want? They want assets, or they want wealth management relationships, or they want something, right? They want money to go in their mutual funds. And their focus is just so much on here. And then you have a user over here and they're like, wait a minute, I don't understand what you're trying to get me to do. So fundamentally what we said was, they're going to go over here. Now, do they need all this stuff over there? Absolutely. But they're only going to go over that bridge to that product owner, that product entity, when they understand what they're trying to do, or they're working with a trusted advisor to help them make those decisions. So what we said first is, let's align with that user. Let's align with them from a privacy and data protection perspective. Let's align with them based on what their needs are. An example of this is how siloed our benefits right now. You've got the 401k provider that can't talk to the HSA provider, that has no idea about the emergency savings provider, that can't tell you about financial wellness, and the high deductible healthcare plan doesn't necessarily know about your dental program. People don't compartmentalize how they make decisions that way. Wait a minute, I'm going to put my HSA hat on today. So what we can say is, by contextualizing the information associated with all of this stuff and telling that user to say, what would you like to talk about today? What do you want to talk about? And then let's ask some questions to help you solve that problem right now. And we'll get you over here. But let's help you figure out this morass of technical terms, all these products and these regulations and these constraints, and let's help you get there. And if we just focus on that and work backwards, I think that it's a seismic shift the way organizations have been doing business for a long time. So maybe that's where we hang our hat, because the other stuff is stuff we like to keep close and fast.
So in summary, are you looking at the whole person instead of every product line's just managing their P&L, and then you have to sort through it because it's all in, they all stay in their swim lanes? But it sounds like the person goes through their front door, as you say, and then it's laid out for them in the order of the questions they ask.
Because, what happens? Oh my gosh, I got a flat tire today, and I don't necessarily know if I can afford a new tire. So do I have an emergency savings account set up? Everyone in the emergency savings world is like banging pots and pans and saying, you guys need an emergency savings account. Then all the 401k people are like, well, wait a minute, if you save an emergency savings account, you're not going to be saving as much in the 401k. And everybody starts getting in a tizzy because they're so protective of their respective areas, and that's okay.
Correct.
But we have to go and say, let's help you with that problem that's burning in your head right now. And then hopefully we've earned the right to help them in a number of different ways.
So can you talk a little bit about then how do you get to tactics? What's a recommendation look like? Or what's the outcome of these chats?
The first thing is as follows. We are 100% believers in advisors and folks that have interpersonal relationships with people. What we're trying to do is help them scale themselves and their businesses so that the interactions, whether it's the first interaction or the 10th interaction, is done so at scale. So by default, our intent is to get people to the other person that can help them make those decisions, because they have a responsibility to that person. But what we can do in the meantime is better understand what they're trying to solve for and how immediate those needs are, and to find the right entity that makes the most sense based upon what those needs are.
Yeah. To that point, and Lisa, I think you mentioned this before, the expression we came up with at Morgan Stanley was our product, we sell retirement, but our product is trust. And maybe the component of our business model that's somewhat unique is using AI to effectively scale trust in a way that benefits individuals.
So maybe an example of it is as follows. We all know that the advisor world is incredibly complex. You have a whole bunch of folks that have different strategies and different ways of servicing their clients.
Yeah.
What we're saying is we're a technology company. So we want that advisor to create their own intellectual property, but we want to help them deploy that intellectual property at scale. So if they have a specific way of reducing debt, or they have a specific way of paying off a mortgage, or a specific way of paying down a 529 plan so they can save for college, all of that intellectual property belongs to that advisor or advisory firm. We simply want to help them distribute it to all the folks that they work with at scale. So for us, it's not about, hey, what's your recommendation? Because anyone can go do a quick Claude or Grok chat and get some sort of off-the-shelf recommendation. For us, there's something special about that advisor or advisory firm. Let's capture it, and then let's help them tell their story to their clients.
I like the clarity you brought there, because when we look at our whole map, retired techs take different points of view, right? Maybe they want to just go direct and generate a ton of demand because they see direct as their channel. And what you made very clear is you see the advisor as an integral part of the formula, right? And you're there to help scale that advisor, because it's not what I know of 5 and 10 years ago, which was financial education or wellness, but it's still general. I'm still trying to read documents or something. This is a chat, and you're bringing that person along and teeing them up for the advisor.
The other thing about working backwards from the user is better understanding what their preferences are. Like for me, as much as everybody wants me to use a financial advisor, I still am that arrogant guy that after this long in time, I think I can manage my own money. I screw it up all the time. But every other financial institution will have, here's your demographic information. This is the service model that we've designed for you. Why don't we just say, what is the service model that person really wants? Do they want to have maybe quarterly meetings with somebody, but it's not necessarily the same person? Maybe they just don't meet the asset minimums of XYZ company, but they want to have that interpersonal relationship.
Yeah.
So working backwards from that user, let's understand what their preferences are, and let's help get them to the right place. And then I think more and more of these financial services institutions are getting more and more privy to that. They can't just say, here's your box and here's your box and here's your box. They're trying to find ways of being a little bit more flexible with their service model to help the needs of the participants.
And I love that you guys were thinking about it through the lens, through the eyes of the employees. And you're saying working backwards. I would say it's actually, that should always be the starting point and then work forward. And I don't think I don't mean to be disparaging against our industry, but if I had to say one area where we could really improve, it is just that. We need to build solutions that are solving problems for the employees and the employees that we serve, not our own problems, not just creating new revenue lines. It's about what is the employee and the employer job to be done, and how can we create solutions? So I love that that's the way you think about it. But also when we talk about unique value prop, you mentioned technology, and I know that you guys come at it from a different way, and maybe this is where we can talk a little bit about your backgrounds too, because Tom, you have an incredibly impressive background as a CTO. So maybe you can share a little bit about that, about what you've done over the years, and then also talk a little bit about the tech that what you guys are building at People. How is that differentiated against others?
No, you've already captured it. At the end of the day, many technologists will fall in love with the technology, and they'll look for any application of a technology just so they can play with the technology. The expression in the tech world is, to a person with a hammer, the whole world is a nail. And that's a pretty narrow-minded way to get lost. And what is, to me, most important, and what clicked with Anthony and I when we first met at Honest Dollar, was this clarity within which, here's the problem, here's what we're trying to do, and here's what we can do. Here are the technologies that are available that allow us to really build a compelling solution to the right problem. So you have to start with the right problem first. You have to start with who is it that you're trying to serve, and then you apply technologies. You look for technologies that fit the problem, not the other way around. And if I have a hallmark in my career, it's that I learned a long time ago, gee, I've got this, I really like garlic. I know I'm going to put a lot of garlic in my, in my eggs. Don't do that. You don't pursue an ingredient, pursue a solution, and pursue that with a clarity and an understanding that says we will apply a very strict criteria to any technology we use, that if it doesn't, Lisa, we had this discussion the other day about make the car go faster. If it doesn't make the car go faster, it doesn't belong in the mix. It's as simple as that.
So I wonder what your reaction is. When we put together our research, we needed a lens to help sort out what was the shiny object or tech for tech's sake versus what you just talked about. And so the 4 simple problems we looked at was just, is there access to a retirement plan in the first place? And why is that getting hitched up? Can we get more people to participate so it's better for everybody? Can we then get them engaged, which it sounds that's one of the things you really focus on. And then are there better outcomes? As you think about those 4 friction points, that if we could solve some or all of them, it just makes our industry better, right?
Our first startup was a company called Honest Dollar. And the intent behind that was providing access to small businesses for retirement plans. This was all before the state-run stuff started taking hold. And I remember having so many fun conversations along those lines. I think that problem is getting addressed. I don't think it's being solved because of all the different moving pieces. But if we can, just like you said, solve one at a time and then have different solutions for different problems, that's incredibly important. I really wish in general that there was a little bit more alignment between some of the folks that are creating these regulatory rules and changes along with some of the folks that are within the industry. And I know there's a whole bunch of folks that have conversations, et cetera, but it seems like there's this ideal over here and then this ideal over here, and there's a really long bridge between the two. And it's like the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom bridge, right? Where it's like very shaky at best. So I think that there's some folks that say, oh yeah, we're collaborating, but at the same time, there's like, yeah. But just like you said, Will, if we just work backwards from the problem we're trying to solve and then focus on that, there's a lot of opportunity for sure.
What are some examples of that bridge, or areas you think we could be closer on?
Maybe to answer that a little bit of a different way, I would challenge the entire industry to think about something, and that is an assets under management revenue model.
There you go.
And I think just because everyone is so tied to it, and you know why, right? Because money is made off of money in the money world. If we can start pulling away from the dependency on that type of revenue model, and not necessarily going like full SaaS and full technology, because there's a whole bunch of problems with that as well. But is there some sort of way for us to stop being so myopically focused in terms of assets and more being focused on either outcome-based pricing or subscription-based pricing or some other type of version of how folks make money? Because if you can never change the way folks in the industry make money, then the idealists will always be over here, and then the industry will always be over here, and never they shall meet in the middle. So you first have to challenge how we can be profitable, and I think that there is profit. I think that you're seeing startups that have been in this space, in the 401k space, on the record keeping side, really think differently about the way that they make money, and they're doing great. So we've got to first challenge the paradigms, and then we can start moving into what I would consider more of a world of collaboration.
Yeah.
Is there other lessons? I was going to say, you both have successfully built companies and had great exits before. Are there lessons when you look back from what you learned in your prior steps that you're now taking to heart in this new venture?
Tom, why don't you take that one?
I think it's a great question. I'm not sure I would say so much lessons like, oh my God, we made these mistakes. I think it's a combination of a refinement of some things that we feel pretty strongly about, as well as a recommitment to the things that matter. And you've touched on, both of you have touched on a number of them already. Begin with the end in mind, borrowing Stephen Covey's line, and being focused on the outcome and devote the activity, devote the technology to producing the best outcome. Finding ways that the industry is ready for disruption because it's been doing something wrong for the longest time. And Anthony's comment about A is a perfect example. Money makes money, it always has. And therefore, the financial services industry for the longest time has been, how do we amass the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time, because that will allow us to generate the most amount of money, assets under management. The problem is that is necessarily an exclusionary approach to financial services, and a whole set of people get underserved who very much need to be served. And so I'm not sure we want to toss A out the window, and I'm not sure we could if we wanted to, but it can't be the only way the financial services industry devotes itself to delivering the services to the people that need them. And so a part of the approach that says, can we augment the successful business models in financial services to say it can't just be about A, there have to be other metrics that also matter that we also pursue.
Could not agree with you more. As we know, in fact, we published this in our next gen 401k report. We showed it's an opportunity, but it's also almost an indictment on our industry. 9 out of 10 employers still do not offer a 401k plan. We just celebrated 50 years of ERISA last September. 9 out of 10 employers don't offer a plan. And part of the challenge, the heart of that, is what you're getting at right here. It's an A game today, and nobody wants to do startup plans because there are no assets, and it takes so long to get there. And so that really cuts at the very first challenge that Will and I talk about, which is expanding access. I worked at a startup. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting to put it in that perspective. I don't know that I've ever put this thought together before, but if you think about where retirement started historically was in defined benefit plans, the classic pensions, and so on. The asset under management question didn't matter so much, but it's when ERISA came along and we introduced 401ks and their brethren 403bs and 457bs that all of a sudden assets under management kind of emerged as an important metric. And so people pursued assets under management in the retirement industry. And I hope that wasn't never the intent, but I think it's been one of the insidious byproducts of ERISA and going to defined contribution plans, because now all of a sudden it created an imbalance, and the industry has spent a long time trying to recover from that imbalance.
That's an excellent point. And I would tend to think it wasn't the intent per se, but you're right, just an insidious
outcome. You ask.
That's true too. Sometimes I do wonder about it. I always have this optimistic view that like the hidden fees weren't really hidden. It's just that it's complicated. People don't understand, right? But
it's funny that now that the medical world is getting into this world of transparency, the way the financial services has gotten pushed into it over the past 20 years or so, it's going to be really interesting to see how the market reacts to how many different folks are in between the end user, the employee, and the actual service provider or the doctor. And there's a ton. It's going to be a really interesting next few years as that seismic shift from this kind of medical world goes into more of a retirement-like environment.
I wonder if we can shift a little bit.
Sure.
Startups are fun, but they're hard. All 4 of us have been in one, are in one right now. Mm-hmm. And could you talk about how you get it off the ground, how you think about distribution and distribution partnerships? And then I have some follow-up questions, but it'd be great to give the audience a peek into what that looks like and how you're getting there.
Do you want us to just cover startups in general, or do you want us to talk about financial services and benefit startups? Like, where do you want us to go?
I want you to talk about financial services and then specifically how you use those lessons to think about your company.
Yeah. Okay. Getting involved in a startup in a regulated environment is really dumb. It's just, you shouldn't do it.
Brutal.
Don't. We've done it before. It's super hard. No, the reality of it is this. You're going to really have to know the industry if you're in a regulated industry before you really step in as a startup, or you're just crazy enough with a whole bunch of money behind you and you just bulldoze through everything, and there's not enough of those out there. So getting something off the ground in a regulated environment, you got to choose where you want to spend your time. So for us, we did the regulated world, the last startup that we did, and now that we're gotten through that environment, we said we're not going to be regulated again. We're just going to be a pure technology play, and that we're going to partner with regulated folks instead of becoming regulated. So maybe that's number one. Number two is really understanding the regulatory landscape that you're getting into, because as we all know, you've got the DOL, you've got FINRA, you've got SEC, you've got HIPAA, and all these other great acronyms.
Yeah.
So not that that's just the regulators. It becomes incredibly important for you to have an understanding of that landscape. So if you're just fresh out of school and you've got an itch to go tear up an industry, take a deep breath, maybe call up a couple of folks with gray hair and ask them what their experiences are in that particular world. To be successful, I think you have to not just understand the industry, but you have to understand the moving pieces and the types of stakeholders that you're going to be dealing with. In our space, in the benefits space, you've got these kind of two different worlds. You've got a medical space that has an entire multi-billion-dollar industry. You've got the retirement and financial services space, multi-billion-dollar industries. And then trying to smush them together, it's not for the faint of heart. So understanding and being connected to folks that understand those businesses and using the network effect is incredibly important. That's what I would say. And per Tom's earlier comments, don't build anything unless you're trying to solve a problem. If you're trying to build stuff because AI is the new shiny penny and you're like, oh, I want to go do the next AI thing, just be careful what you wish for, because there's a lot of noise out there right now. Tom, what do you think?
No, that's exactly right. I think one of my favorite quotes in general is Sturgeon's Law, which was 90% of everything is crap, that relates back to a science fiction writer. But I was listening to a podcast maybe about a year ago by Mark Andreessen, and he was asked his investment thesis, and he said, Sturgeon's Law. And I almost fell off my chair, and he says, 90% of the investments that come to us are crap. Our job is to find the 10%. And I really loved that. Find the nuggets, find the really core ideas that are worth the investment in time. Startups are hard, but but don't make it hard just because it's hard. If you're going to go do something and it's hard, make sure it's at least worthwhile.
So if I connect the dots between things you've said earlier and just now, you're a tech company, you're focused on helping the advisors figure out how to scale themselves. You're very focused on the problems from the most individual user. It's not general personalization, it's personalization for that employee. Mm-hmm. Are there any other aspects? And that sounds like that's learnings from what you know and how you've pointed your company. Are there any other things that you think about as you're trying to connect into the business? So are you connecting with advisors? Are you connecting with healthcare companies? You're connecting with record keepers? Like, how do you think about using your tech to make the industry better and help it?
What a fantastic question. A couple things. So let me rant for a little bit. Our hypothesis is as follows. If the end state user has a delightful experience, then the employer gets goodwill from that. If the employer gets goodwill from the employees being happy, the advisor or the broker or benefits broker gets goodwill from it. So if you share that hypothesis, then you understand our business model. And that's why so many people are in our industry, right? When you think about the ability for us to go out and capture market share, it has to be absolutely laser focused on that end state user so that we can provide that value going backwards and backwards and backwards. And the more you can do it, I mean, something simple like the way we address our privacy between the employee and our platform. We basically say it's attorney-client privilege. And some folks will be like, wait a minute, why would I deploy that? Because I really want all this information on that person so I can cross-sell them something. The smarter people will say, I know I have to earn the right to be there.
Right.
And sometimes it's going to take 2 seconds, and sometimes that's going to take 2 years. But if that person takes that stance, then allowing that trust build to happen is the smart move. Those folks that are going to smash through that and just try to be there, we call it exit through the gift shop, right? Oh, some sort of financial transaction is happening. Go be there, like the ambulance chaser lawyers that you see up on the billboards everywhere. You can't do that. So if we work backwards from that simple formula and everyone aligns with that, then that makes a whole bunch of sense for us. And I think that's what's resonating in the market.
Tom, you have anything to add?
No, I think he's exactly right. I think it's the alignment of a set of key goals in a way that has not been tried before. And if there's a gold nugget in what we're trying to do with people, it's really this kind of magic combination of some of this and some of that, and do it this way and do some of that way, all based on some individual lessons. That's what's exciting about what we're trying to do.
Oh, it's so great. And I think you guys, because we've talked about already how much we love the fact that you're coming at it from the problem, you're looking at it through the eyes of the employees and the employers, you're really thinking about how this impacts the advisor, and you're looking to partner with them, not displace or get in their way. And so you've really thought all that through. And I would imagine, look, you've both been founders before, you've been through this, you've had a successful exit. So how does do you think what is really helping you structure this in what I would say is the right way? Or is it lessons learned along the way, or is this just innately who you are and how you come at it?
Probably two things. So I forgot to answer Will's second part of his question, which is, are you talking to record keepers and healthcare?
Yeah. Who's your ideal place?
The answer is yes, because when you think about I think you have your Retire Tech now is a number of different logos, and yes, the integrations between all of them becomes incredibly important, because if you're trying to help a participant or a user get somewhere within this morass of different logos and different services, you need to be able to interact with these folks and connect them. So are we talking to record keepers? Yes. Are we talking to asset managers? Yes. Are we talking to product providers? Yes. Because the way that integrations are going to happen in the future with technology is going to evolve. Instead of just doing some sort of API call and then being able to contact a calculator or a tool or something like that, the user is simply going to have to make whatever decision they're going to make. And then the software is going to perform that transaction in a very governed way on behalf of that user across multiple types of product entities or administrative entities. And those entities that get it right will understand that this is my job, this is what I'm being expected to do. And if I do my job and I do it to the level of expectation for that end user, maybe I've earned the right to service them in a different capacity. So the folks that get that are going to be incredibly successful. The folks that try to say, I'm going to go bypass everything, I'm going to reach up from the depths of my product and grab that end state user and bring them in with my whiz-bang technology, we have a hypothesis that's going to be ill-received by the market. So now to the startups. Had an exit.
Point, and I hope any other companies on our map or others that aren't, that are building in this space, really heard you and listened to that right there.
We're open to partnering. It's never been easier to have a technology integration than it is now. It's never been easier. It's just, can one of these companies truly say, I know where my lane is, and I know where your lane is? Because the bigger companies get, the more they try to horizontally integrate, and they forget what their kind of core business is, because they're always looking for that next way of cross-selling something. And if they just stuck to that core business and then evolved over time in a very smart way, it'd be great. So back to your question in terms of startups, what have we learned? We've had an exit. what I would say is luck and timing is so important. Skill is completely a deep second. It's just, you got to be there. No, I'm just kidding. The things that we've learned, being in a startup and being in a big company, they're both going to have different levels of joy and pain. The joy of being at a small company is when you first start to get product market fit and traction. That's a great big joy. The pain is when you let one of these companies down because you wanted to do more and you just couldn't. At a big company, the joy is having a complete alignment with your strategy across a number of different business units. That's a great feeling. And the pain is when you don't have that alignment and you have friction with the people that you're working with every day. So I think there's just different levels of tolerance for those two areas, because in a startup is a roller coaster. Day one is amazing. Day two is the worst day you've ever had in your life. But at a bigger company, it's a little bit more graduated. Like you're going to have a really bad week, but then you might have a really good week. But it's just more volatility, I think, in a startup than anything. So hopefully I answered your questions.
I'd like to build on it just a tiny bit, which is startups are not small versions of big companies, right? They're very different. And so what words of wisdom do you have for these ongoing enterprises that would be great partners, but they need to understand ventures like yours so you can just partner more effectively so that you can get up to speed and find that joy not only in fit, but ultimately get alignment within their system?
Tom, why don't you take that first, and then I will talk a little bit about that topic afterwards.
I think it all comes down to this. The engine for any startup is this passion that says, this is something that's never been done before. There's a solution out there to this problem. Sooner or later, somebody's going to build it. Why not us? And, what I tell my college-age kids, the definition of a champion is somebody who gets up one more time and you've been knocked down. They're going to get knocked down. And as long as you're willing to get back up again, startups are great because you're going to get knocked down. And we get knocked down every day. But we get back up and we do it again. And because we are convinced that this is a problem that needs to be solved, that we can solve it.
And my experience at startup is that, to add to your point about this roller coaster and how hard it can be, it's really because everything is so consequential. Every decision you make, every deal that happens or doesn't happen, like no matter what is happening, it is so consequential because you're just trying to get your footing. You're trying to get there, especially if you're pre-revenue and then you haven't quite reached product market fit. It is a grind in a way that it's not at a big company. As an example, I was at a startup where we worked with a large company, and unfortunately, things didn't work out. For us, that was devastating. It was, are we alive tomorrow after this? For them, they went back to their day jobs. Everything is so consequential, and I think that's what makes it. And not to say that, as you said, Anthony, that there are definitely challenges at big companies too. They have their joy and their pain as well, but it is just so different at startup.
One of the parts of the question was, how can big companies learn to work with startups?
Yes.
And I think there are certain companies that have done this incredibly well. I think there are companies that have gotten burnt by either buying a startup or partnering with a startup. And here's the best way I can try to summarize it. Big companies, because of their size, will think that they have big targets on their backs. Some of them do, some of them think they do, and it really doesn't matter if they do or they just think they do. Because of that, they've got a whole bunch of people trying to protect the house. And what happens is that protection bias really prevents them from moving forward. And we all know this, right? I think in this world, with technology where it is right now, organizations and departments like compliance and risk and legal are going to have to recalibrate. There's a reason why specifically. At former companies that I've been at, certain departments would have to look at every single line and every single disclosure and every single piece of paper that went in front of a prospect or a client. With generative AI, there's no two responses that are going to be the same. So you have to, instead of saying, this is my rigid disclosure, you're going to have to contemplate and say, these are the guardrails that my disclosure should have or my responses should have to an end state customer. And most compliance organizations, that's basically foreign. And they're gonna have to really recalibrate and just say, all right, if we spend enough time in working with our technology partners, we can come up with a system that has the ability to look back, that has the ability to do all these controls and governance. We're going to have to define it. But bigger companies, instead of trying to go partner with the next cool startup, they should really look in and say, is this something that's at all feasible before we even waste our time and the startup's time? Because if the business world or the protection-oriented organizations will say no immediately, then it's a non-starter. And sometimes you can get through there and you just have the right business person that bulldozes over these organizations. In many ways, that is shunned because of historical kind of trends. But what I would say is really have those departments think through what is the risk that is potential here, what is the exposure, and can we handle it all? Because they should be working with startups.
I love your observation. I'm sure Lisa's got a question here, but I love your observation that they have to manage the risk. They just need to think about how they define it and manage it differently.
I will give you a story. At one of the big companies I work with, I said, what is your algorithm for determining the monetary amount of risk prior to making a decision on whether you approve or disapprove a project? They couldn't tell me. Right. They could say, we can give you a grade, but I said, if I'm responsible as a business owner for telling you I'm going to make X amount of dollars for the business, and you're saying I can't go pursue that because of the risk, you have to quantify that risk. It's a risk reward. You can never get to the risk reward without having one of those parts of the equation figured out. I think folks are getting better and better at it, but there has to be the same level of rigor that gets put on those types of organizations within these big companies in order to quantify what the actual risk exposure is prior to saying no, because we're going to go into an environment with those folks that are able to demonstrate the control and governance over new technology are just going to leapfrog over those folks that can't get out of their own way because they can't figure out how to quantify risk.
And Tom, as someone who's also been on both sides of the large organizations and the startups, anything to add to that? What would you say to these large organizations as they try to assess companies like yours that are early stage?
I think it comes back to something that Anthony and I have talked about often. Big companies become big because they started off small and learned how to do something really interesting, and then they learned how to scale it. And over the course of scaling a small business to become a big business, anything that interfered economically with the small business scaling to become a big business was kind of anathema. It was something that was like, we don't do that. Over time, however, that makes you very risk averse and it becomes very hard to innovate. But you have to innovate. You have to find some way, whether you do it internally or organically, whether you have partnerships, whether you acquire startups. Sooner or later, any large business that doesn't find some path to innovation within their business mix is just waiting to be disrupted. And the landscape is littered with large companies that could not figure out how to manage that big company scale, small company innovate balance, and ended up going out of business.
That's exactly the Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen.
Exactly what it is. Exactly what it is.
So you're dropping Jobs to Be Done and Clay Christensen in one podcast?
I know.
Like each other.
Yeah.
I am a big fan. Look, I think that's a great place to end this because I think you really dropped some unbelievable advice and insights, I think, for both the large companies, the big brands that might be listening to this, as well as any of the retired techs. So really appreciate you guys being here today. I feel like we could just probably go on for a few more hours. I know we're very philosophically aligned. So any last parting thoughts or if you had just one thing you wanted to leave with folks, what might that be?
Tom, what do you think?
I think I would go back to, at least in the current time frame, AI is going to disrupt a lot of different types of businesses. And it's important for anyone who work in the technology industry to have a very clear idea about where they think AI is going and how they want to embrace it. Not embracing it or not having an answer is not an option.
And because everyone is going to go after the new shiny penny of AI, the noise is going to be deafening. So please work with folks that understand the space before you make a decision. That's probably the biggest one. Work with folks who know what they're doing and that understand the space before making a decision that could really take you on a good path or a bad one.
Perfect. I think that's excellent advice. Again, Will and I thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
It was awesome.
Really enjoyed our chat. Thank you so much. Have a great
All
day.
right. Well, thanks for being here, and join us on the next episode of Decoding Growth.
Decoding growth isn't just talk, it's insight, action, and shared wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, share your insights and join the conversation. Subscribe, rate, review, and spread the word. Thanks for listening. See you next time.